This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is June the 5th, the 156th day of the year, and it's a hot one. Only 209 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays and observances. Hot Air Balloon Day. National Gingerbread Day. National Veggie Burger Day. Yeah. HIV Long-Term Survivors Day. National Sausage Roll Day. National Moonshine Day. Random Acts of Cardness Day. Send somebody a card. National Lincoln Loud Day. The National Day for the Fight Against Illegal, Unreported, Unregulated Fishing. Oh, that's a big one, folks. National Start Over Day. World Environment Day. Couscous Festival. National Fishing and Boating Week. Make it a Beautiful Week. Medicare Fraud Prevention Week. And National Commuter Challenge. All right, let's see what we got in the news. Greta Thunberg and her folks are up to their usual tricks. Being a firm supporter of Palestine, she is en route to Gaza with a bunch of her Looney Tune friends. Well, former President Biden is defending the auto pen use. Well, just got a signature on it, according to him. Who cares how it got there? Federal judge rejected a lawsuit filed by Jewish students against Ivy League schools. After all, being one of God's anointed, he can't do anything wrong. U.S. Embassy is warning about kidnappings on a tourist hotspot. Puerto Vallarta, Nuevo Manda regions. A lot of kidnapping of American citizens by the cartel. You know, everybody has to make money. Corinne Jean-Pierre has split with the Democratic Party, and I'm sure they're devastated by that. And she's written a book. A lot of the folks from the Biden administration are writing books. Undocumented devices found in Chinese power inverters are a threat to national security. Chinese-made solar panels used on American farms put the U.S. power grid at risk. Undocumented channels in Chinese-made inverters raise concerns about them having remote access to U.S. infrastructure. Trump supporters defend the big, beautiful bill against Musk criticism, and they ignore the debt concerns. After all, plenty of tax money. Just ask the Democrats. You know, it's interesting. Almost every single Democrat who went into Congress scraping by are millionaires now. You got to wonder about that. Well, Grandma and Grandpa are turning their golden years into a high time, and it's not safe. For a 50% increase in cannabis among seniors, despite it causing a serious health risk. That's what we need. Grandpa on his motorized scooter, hiring a kite. Key figures are discussing the night-funded transgender athlete study. It's all well and good to support it, but we can't let anybody know we're supporting it after all. NFL vet Jake McQuaid escorted out of mass by police after confrontation with the powers that be over porn accusations against the priest. The Archdiocese of Cincinnati says their investigation didn't find any wrongdoing involving that priest. Nothing to see here. Moving on. Kind of like the Diddy situation. Nothing to see. Well, Musk is not happy about Trump's big, beautiful bill. FBI investigation updates on the Epstein death. Still swearing it was suicide. The mere fact that a lot of others, to include some who were there, say he was murdered, well, we don't really have to pay attention to that. Now, the Diddy situation is bringing in names that would absolutely stun most folks. The Dan Bongino has confirmed, he's now the FBI deputy director, don't you know? He's confirmed Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide based on agency files. He says video evidence shows nobody entered Epstein's cell before his death in 2019. He updated Fox News host Sean Hannity on the investigation. He said the evidence we have in our files clearly indicates it was in fact a suicide. We've got video. It's not the greatest video in the world. I don't want to set expectations on fire, but it does show in that specific block that he goes in, made a phone call. You see 12 hours of guards going in basically to check on him. You don't see anybody really coming out of that bay in that area than him. So unless a guard did it, suicide. Jasmine Crockett accuses Republicans of wanting to put her back into chains. Well, she's another one, just like AOC. Every picture you see, her mouth is open and she's having a meltdown. If she kept her mouth shut and listened, maybe she'd learn something. But I'm not supposed to say that because, after all, she is a female representative. She can't do any wrong. Criminal illegals include child predators and gang members deported from a Texas city. We're talking about the Houston area. Child predators, gang members, and human traffickers are among the 142 criminal illegals deported to Mexico City by ICE out of the Houston area in just the past 2 weeks alone. But of course, God's anointed thinks just because you're a criminal, there's no reason to deport you. Why don't we send them over to the judge's house? Virginia's GOP hopeful, Oral Sears, she's a female, by the way. She is Virginia's lieutenant governor right now. Winsome Earl Sears. She's unveiled an Axe the Tax plan. She says work smarter, not harder. That's the theme Congress ought to be following to pass tax relief in its budget efforts. According to the top Republican, running in only one of two gubernatorial races this year, she's seeking to succeed terminal Governor Glenn Youngkin. She unveiled her Axe the Tax framework. The plan would end taxes on tips in Virginia, mirroring President Trump's policy proposal, and seeking to give a break to residents of the state known for its nightlife and tourist meccas like Alexandria and Williamsburg and Virginia Beach and Roanoke. Food service workers, personal service workers, hospitality, and other gratuity-based industry employees would pay 0% statewide under her plan. She said her plan gives working families a break that they've been clamoring for on both the state and federal levels. Democrats think that's just evil. Raise the taxes so there can be more money for kickbacks. And Trump's budget chief has issued a warning. In fact, he has issued a dire economic warning if the Senate fails to pass the big, beautiful bill. He says the economic storm clouds will be very dark if the Senate doesn't pass that bill. But the Democrats' attitude is as long as there's money for their kickbacks, screw everybody else. Country star Keith Urban has reflected on the intervention that reshaped his future and his marriage. Like many others, he used to really party down. Well, Oregon girls open up on the traumatic trans athlete experiences that pushed him to fight back. The one girl said she felt violated knowing that a man could have watched her change clothes in the locker room. Oregon High School senior Alexa Anderson is now a budding conservative heroine, even though she comes out of a family of Democrats. The Tiger on the high school track and field star refused to stand on the same podium as a trans athlete at the state championship on Saturday, alongside fellow medalist Reese Eckerd. She learned how to avoid the treatment and acts like that prompted from the political side her family aligned with. Oh, they came after her something fierce. Former Tyson critic has detailed the boxer's journey from an apocalyptic life to being a beloved figure. I think it's great all these folks who fight their way to the top suddenly become beloved. Dave Chappelle was talking about the fact that when Trump was elected the first time in 2016, the writers on Saturday Night Live had a meltdown. They were in tears that the beloved Hillary Clinton wasn't going to be president. Russian drone strike killed 5 people in Ukraine after Putin promised retaliation in a Trump phone call. Ukrainian President Zelensky said the first responder arrived to find his own family had been killed in that attack. Killed 5 people, including a 1-year-old, his mother and grandmother, and the attack occurred just hours after President Trump and Russian President Putin spoke on the phone. There were 6 drones that hit the city of Preluki, sparking a rescue operation ended in tragedy for one first responder. Lost his wife, daughter, and grandson in that attack. There's a Saharan dust plume headed toward the U.S., which could cause issues. A number of never-before-seen tombs have been found in Egypt. These aren't royal tombs, they're officials. And apparently archaeologists are having a field day with them. Passengers on airplanes are unhappy with unmasked cougars during this summer season travel surge. Another one of God's anointed stops the Trump administration moving to close the Job Corps centers across the country. The National Job Corps Association filed a motion to stop shutdown of 99 campuses serving disadvantaged youth across America. And one of God's anointed stepped up. Ex-Governor Cuomo dodges sexual harassment questions regarding activities that took place during his time as New York governor. A lot of rumors about him. Republicans are challenging the Democrats' fear-mongering over Medicaid changes and illegal enrollment. Democrats want to put, if you're here and you got a pulse, you should be covered by Medicaid, is the Democrats' attitude. Of course, none of them have to pay the bill. They're busy counting the money that comes in under the table, so to speak. Trump has signed a travel ban targeting several high-risk countries. You can't come here from there, is basically what the travel ban says. And let's see. Nintendo fans are waiting to be the first ones to buy the Switch 2. I used to play Nintendo every day when I grew up. U.S. has rejected a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The mere fact they're terrorists, there's no reason anybody should be unhappy with them. Baltimore fuel spill has prompted a multi-agency response in an attempt to contain the potential danger. According to the Maryland governor, Westmore, the state of Maryland, city of Baltimore officials, and U.S. Coast Guard, they've been working since Wednesday afternoon to pool resources to evaluate, respond, and contain the spill. If they'd spend less time worrying about the folks that got deported and more time worrying about taking care of their constituents, things would be a whole lot better, let me tell you. Israel is warning it's going to act to stop Greta Thunberg's flotilla, which is heading to Gaza. King Charles and Prince Harry's feud is reaching the point of no return, according to experts. Senator Kennedy has crushed an Ivy League professor who was spouting leftist nonsense. Senator John Kennedy, this was Tuesday, represents the state of Louisiana, is known for being one of the most entertaining people in politics. He makes witty comments and jokes, but he also dress you down verbally in a masterful fashion. Kate Shaw, professor, found out what he's capable of doing. A 16-year-old swimmer, a male competing as a male, I might add, broke Michael Phelps' record at the 2025 U.S. Swimming Championship. Fox News, as usual, outperformed the major networks. CNN has hit the lowest rating of the year. And let's see, I think that's got it. All right, we've been talking about a lot of strange topics. Yesterday, it was spontaneous human combustion. And today, we're going to talk about some of the mysteries surrounding lost civilizations. For example, who built the Serpentine Temple in Brittany that winds along for 8 miles and contains more than 10,000 massive stones, 300 of which are over 15 feet high? We'd be hard-pressed to move it today with our equipment. But physical or mental giants constructed the pre-Incan Andean fortress of Sacsayhuamán. The mystery of this Andean fortress is how the primitive Peruvians are able to hoist several hundred stone blocks, some of which weigh more than 200 tons, more than 2 miles above sea level. Whose features inspired the stone faces scattered on Easter Island? And what primitive religionist fashioned the Baalbek platforms in Syria? How did they raise slabs weighing 1,200 tons each to the top of 54 pillars that reach more than 90 feet into the air. And can you conceive of the ancient peoples who built the famous Black Pagoda? This temple stands 228 feet high and supports a single stone slab that's estimated to weigh 2,000 tons. We couldn't do that today. What modern derrick could hoist a 2,000-ton bulk without collapsing under the weight? Now, a lot of researchers are wondering are civilizations cyclical? Has mankind reached heights of technological advancement comparable to, or even superior to our own, only to collapse into the dust and later rise from its own ashes and begin to climb over again? Or, as some theorists suggest, have gods from UFOs descended from time to time in our own recorded history to aid man in erecting some of these truly impossible edifices? What's more fascinating than taking a peek at the past and the remnants of long-forgotten civilization, there are lessons and even warnings for our own time. And some of the crumbling villages around the world once lived men and women who loved and struggled and desired success and fought failure, were subject to the same failings of the flesh that we deal with today. But we know so little about them. In some cases, we even know what they were called. In other instances, we use their names. We see them proudly displayed, but the people themselves had vanished, totally, inexplicably, in some cases almost overnight. Then there's the evidence of early explorers on our own continent. June 6, 1969. James Hudnall, Jr., an archaeologist for the New England Antiquities Research Association, announced radiocarbon testing of some strange stone structures in New England proved they'd been built about 3,000 years ago. Artifacts found in stone chambers near the structures indicate that the monoliths had been built by a culture similar to those that inhabited the Mediterranean from about 3000 BC to 500 BC. Now, his theory is that the stones are very similar to work done by the megalithic culture known to have inhabited the Iberian Peninsula. Other experts believe that the structures may be of Phoenician origin, and a number of archaeologists have long held that certain Bronze Age explorers may have successfully crossed the Atlantic and found their way to America. Dr. Stephen Williams, head of Harvard's Peabody Museum, but we shouldn't hold that against him, says that the mysterious stone structures are put up by American colonists. They're doing good to build a fort out of wood, much less stone structures. Anybody for, when we're discussing a possible Atlantean expedition, it might have built these monoliths after the destruction of their own continent. Well, whether it was the Atlanteans or not, it appears that some quite advanced civilization got to America long before Columbus, the Vikings, or even any Mediterranean culture. Let me ask you a question. What does the word in Katsita mean? According to a report of the Smithsonian Institution, 1881 to 619, told of a pair of tiny silver crosses unearthed in Georgia. The workmanship was exquisite. The engraving on the backs reads IYNKICIDU. C and the D are turned backward. But that inscription is made up of the same kind of letters we use to write out everything from books to shipping lists. There was a Reverend Grass opened a number of mounds near Davenport, Illinois, and discovered several large tablets. One looked like a street marker. Had the legend IF-Towns, TOWNS. But the American Indians didn't use the alphabet. Or did they mark their villages and streets? They also didn't use coins either, but a number of collections of really unusual coins have been found on the North American continent. In September 1833, Whitman boring for water near Norfolk, Virginia, found a coin that experts declared was stamped with figures representing a warrior or hunter and other characters. It appeared to be of Roman origin. Jacob Moffat of Chillicothe, Illinois, found up the coin while drilling at a depth of 120 feet. He saw on the coin tokens of the machine shop, but Professor Leslie dismissed it as an astrological talisman with the signs of Pisces and Leo, and a legend inscribed on it in a language somewhere between Arabic and Phoenician, without being either one. Although Professor Leslie made no accusation against Moffat, he stated the coin had been planted in the ground by a practical joker. Apparently, this practical joker was willing to dig down 120 feet and sit by patiently laughing and waiting for somebody who decided to drill in that precise spot where his bogus coin was covered by tons of soil. Professor Winchell said the symbols on the coin could have been etched there with acid. And then we have to ask who worked the copper mines of Lake Superior. There are extensive mines there that obviously worked by people highly skilled in the techniques of extracting various ores from both earth and stone. Local Indian tribes have absolutely no tradition relating to these mines, and not a single artifact or bit of bone has ever been found to portray the identity of these prehistoric miners. Could they have been the miners of the mysterious copper coins that keep turning up across the U.S.? I would also point out that in some of the mounds they have found bodies 8 and 10 feet tall wearing copper armor. In May of 1953, workers of the Lion Coal Cops Wadis mine of Wadis, Utah, broke into a vast network of tunnels that appeared to be of great antiquity. And pockets of coal within these strange tunnels were oxidized to the stage where the coal could nearly be scooped up with the bare hands. Miners also reported finding rooms where the coal had been processed. And what's thought to be the oldest of all lost mines in North America was found in 1961 in the Mojave Desert, northeast of 29 Palms, California. Barry Storm, the man that discovered it, the canoes of highly skilled prehistoric Mayans worked the site for jade when the desert country was a series of lush valleys. Radiocarbon testing indicate the mine was in operation about 1500 BC. But it seems unlikely that the same Mayans journeyed up to Utah to extract some coal. When the Incas were a flourishing empire, the remains of a city they named Tiwanaku, City of the Dead, was already an ancient ruin. Bits of pottery and other artifacts indicate the city might be as much as 20,000 years old. And its unknown inhabitants may have created a culture in prehistoric Bolivia that was as advanced and sophisticated as any known to modern man. Little evidence is available for study. Experts have determined that the inhabitants of Tiwanaku were a much taller people than the present dwellers of the high plateau. Nor did they have the prominent cheekbones that one generally associates with the Amerindians of the region. In 1964 in Peru, Professor Frederick Engel and his associates discovered the ruins of a city at least 9,000 years old. When they unearthed the skeletal remains of the former inhabitants, they found these people too were taller than the present tribes in the area. But once again, it's an anthropological mystery. just exactly who they were. Then the remains of an ancient city 6,000 feet beneath the surface of the ocean off the coast of Lima, Peru, were discovered in 1966 by Dr. Robert Menzies, who was exploring the Milne Edward Deep, a depression nearly 19,000 feet deep in some regions. Old Inca ruins dot the nearby shore, and archaeologists are convinced that the remains of an even older civilization are certain to be documented and discovered as time goes on. But a city that lies 6,000 feet under the sea could actually lead to what Dr. Menzies speculated to be one of the most exciting discoveries of the century, insofar as ruins go. And such a find couldn't help reminding us of the fabled lost continent of Atlantis. Professor Angelos Gallinopoulos, Greek seismologist, has theorized that the legend of Atlantis sprang from the destruction of an ancient metropolis on the island of Thera in the Aegean Sea. He maintains that a volcano exploded with such violence and nearly 2/3 of the island was destroyed. And he's been encouraged by the findings of a group on the American research ship Chain, led by Dr. James Maver of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. He was especially delighted by the discovery in 1967 of a wide moat in the submerged ruins of Thera. According to the New York Times, Plato, the ancient philosopher who gave the fullest description of Atlantis, wrote that the hill that stood in the center of the metropolis island is surrounded by a moat that served as a secure harbor. And this moat, which circles the Acropolis of the metropolis, was one of Atlantis' main features. This discovery is one of the most convincing proofs that the legendary Atlantis has actually been located. Well, maybe it has, but there are other theorists who've located other convincing proofs of the true location of Atlantis, not to mention the many mystical interpretations of the legendary continent. Actually, from all the descriptions in ancient texts, the small island in the Aegean Sea just doesn't seem to be of the heroic enough proportions to qualify as a very convincing site for Atlantis. A recent discovery has cast new light on another legendary continent. Just when sophisticates and scientists had proved that Colonel James Churchward's tombs on the lost continent of the moon were nothing but literary hoaxes, Dr. Albert Smith, a botanist with the United States National Museum, announced that he had new evidence that the island of the Southwest Pacific were but nine fragments of an ancient Polynesian continent. According to Dr. Smith, who may never have heard of Mu, but who inadvertently reactivated the controversy in 1956, did a statistical analysis of Fijian flora, shows overwhelming affinity for the plants in Malaysia, especially those of New Guinea, the Solomons, and New Hebrides. In the estimation of Dr. Smith and of numerous other anthropologists and archaeologists, the evidence strongly supports the theory that there was a landmass of considerable size that formerly existed in the Pacific. In 1965, Professor Dragoslav Slejovic of the University of Belgrade in Yugoslavia discovered remains indicating that civilization, rather than spreading outward from the Middle East, existed in the Balkans at the same time the most primitive Neolithic villages existed in the Middle East. Massive sandstone faces that represented household deities were dug up along the banks of the Danube River in Lubinsky Vura, about 60 miles from Belgrade. Extensive excavation later produced the remains of a town that dated back to about 7,000 BC. That's according to radiocarbon dating techniques. According to Professor Slejovic, these were an artistic people, a religious people. Their sense of mystery and their expression of it reminded one of the Paleolithic cave paintings at Lacau. The highly complex layout of their towns show they were at least a pre-Neolithic people. One of the great mysteries in South America, archaeological and anthropological studies, is why the Mayans, who were ignorant of wheel and had no vehicles or carts, built some of the broadest highways in the world. Extraordinary Boulevard at one particular town is said to be wide enough to park 8 modern automobiles side by side. And these avenues, made of limestone blocks and surfaced with limestone cement, stretched out for miles across mountains and jungles. Here's another anthropological, archaeological puzzler in Kentucky. How did a tooth-tined iron fork find its way into a prehistoric American Indian gravesite near Eddyville? Chickasaws occupied the grounds between 1200 AD and 1500, but Amerindians possessed no iron utensils. And an iron fork in an ancient Amerindian gravesite is one kind of trouble, but misplaced mummies, they stir up a special kind of weird brew. Egyptians made a whole religious cultural ritual out of the proper preservation of the dead. But then you have to ask who prepared the 30 mummies excavators found in the eastern Sonora state, Mexico. 30 of them, perfectly preserved, dressed in rich clothing and lavish jewelry, obviously members of the priesthood. All these mummies were more than 10,000 years old. They were found resting in a large cave sealed with a huge boulder. To this point, no clues have been found to suggest that what vanished Mexican civilization might have preserved the bodies of their dead in the same manner as the Egyptians. And while some undetermined culture was busy making mummies in Mexico, another mysterious people was industriously shaping large stone spears in the tropical forest of Costa Rica. Some of these weird balls weigh only a few pounds. Others are as large as 8 feet in diameter, weigh more than 16 tons. Scientists dug under the balls, thought they'd find hidden burial places, and didn't find anything. Some are arranged in rows, some in circles, others in triangles. They may have been used for religious purposes or in an attempt to chart the stars, but quite frankly, nobody has a clue at this point. And speaking of stones, there's always that controversial Kensington runestone that's irritated scholars for eons. According to one school of thought, this 202-pound slab with its runic inscription discovered in Alexandria, Minnesota, offers the most rock-solid proof that the Vikings discovered America long before Columbus set sail to find a shortcut to India. And although it now appears that the Vikings, the Welsh, and maybe some Mediterranean people there in the Atlantic centuries before Columbus, the authenticity of the Kensington runestone has not yet been solidly established. Historian Hjalmar Holland spent 50 years attempting to prove it was genuine. His translation of a inscription on the front of the stone reads, "We are 8 Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploring journey from Finland through the west. We had a camp by the lake, 2 rocky islands. One day's trip north from the stone. We went out and fished one day, and we came home. We found 11 of our men red with blood and dead. Ave Maria, save us from this evil." Markings on the side of the stone read, 10 of our party by the sea to look after our ships. 14 days trip from this island. And the date is given is 1362. Well, Holland believed the survivors of the Indian raid settled down with the Mandan Indians, and it was their blonde, blue-eyed descendants whose un-Indian-like appearance astounded members of the Lewis and Clark expedition. In Rhodesia, Africa, is the Zimbabwe ruins, an ancient temple comprising more than 1 million 6 by 6 by 12-inch granite blocks. And what's so startling about Zimbabwe is that absolutely no quarry rock or granite exists within hundreds of miles of the temple. So you have to ask yourself, what's the distant monarch of the priesthood must have imposed its will on thousands of subjects or slaves and forced them to carry 1 million granite blocks, a distance of up to 1,000 miles. There are hundreds of such archaeological and anthropological oddities. A bit of research, you can easily compile a volume of ponderous proportions with seemingly impossible primitive engineering feats, and which has to prepare the perplexing question: who constructed all these massive monuments, temples, and deserted cities? It's amazing how little we know of the past and how very much the past might be able to tell us about our future. The unfortunate thing is that if something turns up that doesn't fit the accepted solution, so to speak, the Smithsonian comes and takes it, and it goes into the basement of the Smithsonian Institute. Well, from unexplained cities and monoliths, let's talk about giants and monsters and skeletons of great size. I made reference to it earlier. Deshaun Alexander, in the December 8, 1967 issue of Life magazine, man has always needed monsters, and he still does. Our mythical beasts are part of the need to know what we are, to find the monstrosity from which we arose, the missing link, so to speak, the hairy thighs. But along with our need of him as the monster's own need to escape. That's why there's always some impairment in the one who cites the monsters. He might be drunk, he might be running for his life. He's 5 years old, his camera's defective, he's blinded by the snow, or mad after 3 days in the desert. The monsters to be seen, or heard, but not photographed. The fog, the flames, or chasms between it and us are more than traditional. They're mandatory. A monster is supposed to be dimly glimpsed. She was writing about a persistent part of man's collective unconscious, the gargantuan beast, and somewhat perceptively, she revealed our compelling desire to discover this possible missing link, but at the same time to keep him in the background of our mind, should he ever prove too embarrassing. Info, the 40 town crier, never allows such observations to slide out of sight to preserve somebody else's comfort. In Volume 1, Number 3 of Info, highlighted an article from the Houston, Texas Chronicle of December 14, 1966. According to this article, an archaeological expedition on the hunt for Indian relics found its way to the outskirts of Blythe, California, along the Colorado River. And there they found giant footprints marching across the desert plateau. According to Dr. Emily Davis, head of the expedition and staff member, San Diego's Museum of Man, we don't know the age of those prints, who made them, or why. In all, there were 10 horseshoe-shaped prints, each 3 feet in diameter. Flanking these 10 prints were 2 straight rows of 10 circular impressions each. And close by the patterns were 10 piles of rocks, and between the patterns lay thin sheets of rusted steel and iron. As you might imagine, nobody in Blythe could shed any light on these mysterious desert formations. Other markings visible in the sand were a perfectly preserved Indian dance circle, which the archaeologists believed to be several hundred years old, and faint tank treads thought to have been made during 1944 Army maneuvers located 35 miles southwest of Blythe. Dr. Davis informed the press of her intent to ask Washington for any possible clue or military significance about the prints. These distinguished prints were also examined by the Bureau of Land Management. Though the Interior Department labeled the markings an archaeological site, it may or may not be Indian. The Bureau of Land Management simply admitted it was a mystery. They didn't have any idea what they were. One fellow decided to follow the news by writing Dr. Davis a letter of inquiry. The letter was returned with a handwritten note at the bottom of the page. Tracks were remains of a recent U.S. Army desert maneuver. No comment. Signed E.L. Davis. Info, of course, interpreted this action as evasive, indicating the concealment of information. The journal felt Dr. Davis's original description didn't even lead a blind man to think that these impressions are tank tracks. Did Dr. Davis really come across impressions of army maneuvers, or was it our elusive monster keeping one step ahead of the chasm between it and us? Well, monsters don't need to restrict themselves to the giant hairy form. Giant of any species could qualify as a monster. In our literary imagery, we often refer to gorillas, and apes, and elephants, and whales as monsters. A lot of giants have walked the earth, and a lot of them in the past, not the least of which is man. Well, in June of 1954 issue of Galaxy, Willie Lay devoted his regular column for your information to a discussion of the giants in the animal kingdom, past and present. You begin with the land mammals, the largest of which is the African elephant. An old bull elephant can stand as high as 11 feet and weigh 6 or 8 tons. The others runner-ups to that size is the Indian elephant, which averages half a foot shorter and a ton lighter than the African cousin. In the past, a particular European variety of mammoth topped the African elephant by 30 inches, and another extinct elephant rose 10 inches taller than the mammoth. Well, far and away, the largest land mammal of all time was the hornless rhinoceros, which lived in southern Asia during the Tertiary period. This creature stood 18 feet high and reached a length of 27 feet. He pointed out that the present Indian rhinoceros could have walked under his distant ancestor without having to duck. However, the marine mammals of our own day hold the record, exceeding in size anything that moves now or has ever moved. And the largest of these is the blue rorqual. The length of this leviathan has been recorded anywhere from 80 to 100 feet. And the weight of a full-grown specimen is estimated at 150 tons. This tops even the brontosaurus that weighed in at mere 38 tons. If we talk about birds, 2 categories have to be introduced. The largest by wingspread and the largest by weight. The wandering albatross takes the prize in the first category, supporting a wingspan of 12 feet and a weight of 15 pounds at its largest. Both the South American and the California condor are easy winners by weight, having a wingspan of 11 feet and a weight of about 31 pounds. And if you're talking about flightless birds, the African ostrich nudges out all competitors, looks down from a height of 8 feet and weighs 160 pounds. Most massive of the prehistoric birds was the Trema gigantea from the lower Eocene of Wyoming. His heavy ancestor of today's cranes had a skull almost 20 inches long and a fearsome beak equally long. Stood at 7 feet and had a massive bulk of 300 pounds. In the reptilian category, it's common knowledge past species walk away with all the honors. But today's Indian crocodile would still be no delight for a swimmer to come upon. One specimen of this water demon was 33 feet long, 13 feet 8 inches in circumference. Turtles reach an overall length of 9 feet by 6.5 feet and can weigh as much as 1,450 pounds. And the South American anaconda, the largest living snake, uncoils to a length of 20 to 25 feet. Of the prehistoric reptiles, the brontosaurus is probably the largest. Cousin Diplodocus was probably the longest due to its excessively long tail. From the tip of its nose to the end of its tail, it measured 70 to 75 feet. It was a marine turtle from the past. It was approximately 13.5 feet long and weighed about 3,500 pounds. Well, we went on to talk about amphibians and fishes and insect and crustaceans, but here the giants are relative to the other members of their species. He does conclude with an observation on man as monster and giant. Indeed, man belongs to the 1% of all Earth life that qualifies for the title of giant. Man averages a height of 5.5 feet and weight of 130 pounds with extremes of 8.5 feet and 600 pounds. He has a arm spread of 5 to 8 feet, and as Lay points out, there's nothing small about that. And if a certain M. Lecotte can be believed, there have been humans who would have thought that small. He provided information on giants for the General Notification of the British Reading Public on January 11th, 1840 issue of the London Mirror. According to Monsieur Lecotte, 2 human skeletons were discovered by the Athenians near their city. The length of one was 34 feet. The other was an incredible 2 feet longer. A shorter relative of these two, only 30 feet in height, was found near Palermo, Sicily in 1548. And 2 years after the Sicilian discovery, another skeleton was unearthed. This one measured 33 feet. Finally, another giant skeleton, this one 30 feet long, saw the light of day. He then asserted that in 1705, a 22-foot skeleton was found and the thigh bone was preserved in Valencia, Spain. Another skeleton was found, the skull of which allegedly held a bushel of corn. If these skeletal remains were in fact preserved, you might wish that a modern scientist to go to Valencia or to Sicily and substantiate these claims. Other historical accounts of giant-sized skeletons include those of Abbé Nazari. This man noted that a body exhumed in Calabria, Italy, measured 18 Roman feet. Average weight of the molars was an ounce. And Hector Boethius, in the 7th book of the History of Scotland, declares that the bones of a 14-foot man who had been jokingly nicknamed Little John were preserved. And a more recent sighting of giants was reported in a July 1966 Reuters bulletin from Rio de Janeiro, which stated that members of the peaceful Recanati, Kayabai, and Munduruku tribes of the Kayapo Nation have lodged official complaints against giants who are killing hunters and villagers. These complaints were relayed by Brazilian Air Force cadets who'd been receiving jungle survival training among the Indians on the Xingu National Indian Reservation. Cadets stated they were shown extremely large bows and stone axes the Indians had brought back with them after battles with their jungle enemies. The harassed Indians call their jungle foes Grimacocores, or pudding basin haircuts. The name is derived from the particular headgear worn by the giants. According to what the cadets were told, these huge warriors wore white feathers stuck into a resinous substance smeared over a shaved patch on their heads. Most recent information about these mysterious giants was that of the Brazilian Indian Protection Service. They were organizing a 39-man expedition to investigate the claims of the Indians. It's impossible to establish communication with this unknown tribe. The expedition will be headed by Francisco Morales, one of the service's most experienced scouts, and expected to reach the vicinity of the giants by July 25th, 1966. Unfortunately, none of the news services carried any report on the results of this expedition, so it's not known whether it was successful or not. Did they find the jungle giants? Did they establish contact with them? Or did they run into a few of these primitive bows and stone axes? Word may yet be released, but I wouldn't hold my breath. These giants of the Amazon may well exist just west of Lake Victoria in Africa. Living side by side with the world's smallest ethnic group, the Pygmies, is the towering Watusi tribe. The first indications that a taller race once inhabited North America came with the discovery of a Supal Canyon, Arizona, of a picture depicting a mammoth attacking a man. This painting was found by Harold T. Wilkins, who determined the man must have been over 10 feet tall. Indians in that vicinity stated that the drawings were made by the giants of long ago. And this particular phrase pops up more than once in this field of research. Skull found in one of the many quilt dwellings near Winslow, Arizona, was described by Jesse Benton and cow by the tail as being so large that a Stetson hat on it looked like one of those tiny hats merrymakers wear on New Year's Eve. He also stated that the gold tooth had been found in the skull, ruling out the possibility it had been part of an animal rather than a giant man. According to oral tradition, Delaware Indians once lived in the western U.S. For some unknown reason, at some point in their history, they migrated eastward as far as the Mississippi River, where they were joined by the Iroquois. Both tribes were seeking land better suited to their way of life, and they continued together on their eastward track. Scouts sent ahead learned of a large nation had inhabited the land east of the Mississippi. They had built strong cities. The name of these people were the Kalagawe, or the Allegawa, from which the Allegheny River and the mountains are named. And that tribe was considerably taller than the according to the Delawares, and there were a good many giants among them. When the two migrating tribes asked for permission to pass through the country, it was denied, and fighting broke out, which continued for a number of years. Finally, the Allegawa and further to the west. They then appear in the legends of the Sioux, whose tradition tells of a race of great stature, but very cowardly. The Sioux determined Allegawa and exterminated the Allegawa when they arrived in Minnesota. Do we have any archaeological evidence that substantiates these Indian traditions? Well, rising out of the area to both Ohio and Minnesota are huge remains of the mysterious mountain builders. Mounds in both areas are apparently raised by the same people. They're extremely large. So these giant mounds indicate giant people. Enormous weapons, including a copper axe weighing 38 pounds, have been found in these mounds. Could an average-sized man casually wield a 38-pound axe? However, since implements alone are not proof of a giant race, the best proof would be the skeletons, if they could be found, and let me assure you they have. Several years ago, two brothers living in Dresbach, Minnesota, decided to enlarge their brick business. And to do that, they had to remove several large Indian mounds, and in one of the mounds, they unearthed the bones of men over 8 feet tall. Unfortunately, the bones crumbled and exposed to the air, so their existence rests on the word of the Minnesota brothers. In Mount Crescent, Minnesota, not far from Dresbach, mound diggers found large skeletons and bones of men of huge stature. In Chatfield, Minnesota, mounds were excavated, revealing 6 skeletons of enormous size. The unusually large skeletons of 7 people buried head down were discovered near Clearwater, Minnesota. Skulls are reportedly had receding foreheads, and teeth were double all the way around. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We're out of time. We'll be back tomorrow and finish talking about giants. And then we're going to talk about the little people. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.